Tony Blinken in Ukraine said that we have seen good progress in the counteroffensive.
I'm here first and foremost to demonstrate our ongoing and determined support for Ukraine as it deals with this aggression. We've seen good progress in the counteroffensive.
What does it mean in the eyes of Tony Blinken?
Yeah, I don't know what he's looking at. It's sort of signs of the delusion. When you go back and look over the course of the war over the last year. So yes, it's true that Russia withdrew initially from the area around Kharkiv, that it didn't have enough forces in the area. But it's not like it had not taken Kharkiv over, and it was what we're talking about is a lot of farmland. So they withdrew from the farmland. Then they did a tactical retreat over the Dnieper River in October because of the possibility of flooding, which later happened. They didn't want to have their troops trapped on the wrong side of the river. But apart from those, the Russians have been continuing to advance. The first it was Soledar, and then they captured Soledar. Then it was the fight for Bakhmut, and then they took Bakhmut, and then they have continued to extend the perimeter out around there. So again, Blinken he lives in his own little private fantasy world. That's the only thing I can figure out.
The Economist reported that the head of the U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency said that the U.S. and Ukrainian officials failed to assess the depth of Russian defenses. How is that possible?
What I called it intelligence malpractice. So it's not like Russia was building these in secret. They were quite open about the fact that they were constructing it. And in the course of that construction project, so we're talking about, concrete trucks coming out, pouring concrete, trenches being dug, the dragon's teeth being put into the earth and row up on row. At no time during that entire process did Ukraine start launching attacks with either missiles or artillery on those positions. So, what did they expect? It was clearly they could have tried to disrupt it. They didn't. And now that they're fully manned and operational, Ukraine's finding they can't even break through the first one.
It seems to me that they're not so honest when Tony Blinken says that it was a good progress, and now they're talking about their failed assessment of the Russian defenses. In your opinion, is that a political move?
This is clearly part of the deliberate public relations campaign. I don't know who they think they're fooling. I guess maybe they're counting on a gullible Western press and public to continue to swallow these lies. But it's just, as I had some people who were definitely pro-Ukrainian writing me saying, "Yeah, see, they've broken through. See how wrong you are." And I said, "Show me the pictures. Where are the war correspondents who are out there standing on top of these dragon's teeth, showing me the bodies of the Russians that they've killed as they've taken over these positions?" Well, they can't show those because they don't exist. It hasn't happened. So we just have to continue to demand evidence as opposed to statements.
We've seen that German media reported that 160,000 Ukrainians of military age have fled to Germany. We know how they're short considering manpower in Ukraine. How do you see this process of getting more troops, getting more people into the army in Ukraine?
Well, it gives the Germans and the Poles an incentive to deport a bunch of these Ukrainians, but it's going to be a short-term deportation because they'll get sent to Ukraine. They'll be put into the army, or at least, put into a uniform. Then they've got to be sent somewhere for training. So they'll be sent back to Poland and Germany for training, at a minimum. And there it's a question of how, really how much training they'll get. Normally, we talked about this before. If you're going into like the U.S. military, you're figuring 3 months to go through basic training. That's to figure out how to put on your uniform, how to march in formation, how to understand and respond to orders, maybe some marksmanship, limited amount. That's 3 months. Well, most of these Ukrainians haven't even been getting 6 weeks of training. They've been getting like 3-4 weeks, and then they're thrown to the front, and they're not effective troops. So even after you go through basic training, you figured out now how the military does things. Then that's where you go into what's called advanced individual training, AIT. And that is where you learn certain skills, and you get into more complex areas such as land navigation, communications, how to conduct combined arms operations. And so all this training would take months and months. And Ukraine doesn't have months and months. It's not like they got a ready supply, and they can't train them inside Ukraine because any large mass of troops inside Ukraine is going to be attacked by Russia. So the only way that they can train them with some degree of safety is to take them outside. And once they're outside in Poland or Germany or France or Italy, Romania, they're getting, if they're in 10 different countries with 10 different languages, they're going to get 10 different kinds of training, which means you don't have any standardized uniform training that they're all, singing from the same playbook.
Are we going to see any uprising against Zelensky in the Ukrainian army?
I fully expected it. I'm sort of surprised it hasn't taken place. Military leaders like Zaluzhny and Syrskyi, they're reportedly at odds with each other. But, it is not, they're not looking, Zelensky is not a powerful political figure. He's not wildly popular inside Ukraine. And candidly, he was elected on a lie. He promised to seek peace with the Russians and instead has escalated the war. So, I think there's a lot of machinations going on behind the scenes that we don't see. The so-called detention of Kolomoisky, who was very prominent in bringing Zelensky to power, I think was not so much a desire to go after him to, attack him personally. It was more a move to keep him from being able to testify in any way before the U.S. Congress and impeachment proceedings against Joe Biden. So that, I think that these things, what we're seeing on the surface doesn't always necessarily translate into something that's transparent.
During the course of this war, we've seen the escalation, cluster bombs, then F-16s. Now we are seeing that they're going to send cruise missiles, and they're talking about depleted uranium bombs. How do you see this sequence of escalation in the Biden administration's foreign policy?
Well, it's not following any kind of plan. A plan is, I say, hey, if we're going to build a house, first we got to lay down the foundation. Then once we lay down the foundation, then we have to install the plumbing and all the wiring and the tubes for to run the water and the toilet. There's a lot you have to go through step by step as part of constructing a house. This thing is just being thrown together. And the use, for example, of cluster munitions in lieu of regular 155 millimeter shells is simply because the United States doesn't have any of what Ukraine ought to be getting. So they're having to send something else. Remember, the HIMARS were going to be the game changer. Turns out, nope. Patriot missile. Remember, we were hearing all about the Patriot. Now we're not hearing anything. And the Patriots, the Russians basically are striking Kiev, Lvov, and other cities throughout Ukraine without hesitation and without having to worry about the missiles getting shot down. The 155 millimeter howitzers. Again, the problem we noted there, the shortage of ammunition. Leopard 2s, Challengers. Now they're going to put M1 Abrams. Those tanks are getting destroyed as soon as they get out into the field. Eventually, F-16 jets. Those will be shot down and the pilots killed. So all the time, effort, energy, money wasted on training pilots, they'll be gone very quickly. So it's just it's not even a matter of sending equipment, because whatever equipment they send is still, there's not a cadre of Ukrainian troops capable of operating that equipment effectively, efficiently.
How do you see the Russian strategy right now? Are they going to go on offensive?
They may. I think one of the things people have failed to really take into account is how the nature of warfare has changed over the course of the last 20 years because of the development and proliferation of drone technology. So drones are used both for gathering intelligence and for giving you real-time information about troop locations, troop movements, and they give you the capability to carry out military strikes against the personnel, the vehicle, and the locations that you identify with those drones. So part of what that has meant is it's very difficult to assemble, say 5, 10, 15,000 troops into one area as part of a concerted drive to penetrate a particular spot in the line. You can get away with 100, 200, but not much more. So that has limited, I think, what do we call sort of these big maneuvers with large formations of troops, simply because the vulnerability to ISR, and then the fact that they could then be struck with missiles, whether it's cruise missiles, Storm Shadows, or HIMARS. So you've got to take all of that into account, and that, I think that's one of the things that Russia's cognizant of, which why it's been content to use its decided advantage with artillery to waste away the Ukrainian forces and Ukrainian vehicles.
As we go forward, we see more articles appearing in the mainstream media just addressing the failure of this counteroffensive. Do you think these kind of articles gonna force Biden administration to find an off-ramp?
Well, that's our hope, but it doesn't seem to be playing out that way. I mean, Blinken's statements this week in that press conference, he doubled down on, we're committed, we're sending more money, we're sending more weapons. No hint whatsoever of, this is without continued progress, without some actual progress, the United States is going to not be able to stick this out. He sent the exact opposite message. So, yeah, you would think that the conditions on the ground would warrant a change in policy, but I've seen no indication that the United States is moving in that direction yet.
It seems that Democrats are desperately needing this war. What?
Yeah, well, they were counting on using, portraying Biden as this great war-leading president as a part of his re-election bid. Again, what we're seeing with Biden is increased dysfunction with each passing day, more mental deterioration. And so it's not really clear that he's in charge or he's calling the shots. And that's the real question of who is in charge, who is making the fundamental decisions, particularly with respect to this war.
Do you think that the current situation of Biden physically and mentally makes him a perfect choice for those people who are running the show?
Yes, he's easy to manipulate. And, he's the front guy that, he can ultimately end up taking the blame, but he is not the strategic visionary, the decision maker in this.
How do you see the role of the Ukraine war and what is happening right now in Taiwan in making these alliance, this partnership that goes beyond alliance between Russia and China?
Well, we're seeing a complete reordering of the international world. The world that was established basically by the United States with the support of Europe in the aftermath of World War II was an order that consisted of the United Nations, dominated by the United States, International Monetary Fund, World Bank, other organizations that the U.S. is called the international rules-based order, and yet the United States controlled it primarily because the power of the dollar. What's happened as a result of the combination of economic sanctions against Russia and the heightened escalation in rhetoric and threats against China, coupled with the threats against Russia, it's led Russia and China, as you note, to work more diligently on creating a new world order. And BRICS has been around for a while, but this really breathed life into BRICS. So it brings Brazil, India, South Africa to the fore as well, along with Russia and China. And the search to create an alternative financial universe, the distancing, we've seen of Saudi Arabia basically distancing itself dramatically from Washington, and reconciliations between Saudi Arabia and Iran have changed the picture in the Middle East. So instead of those two being at each other's throats, they're not cooperating. So what we're witnessing is the emergence of a new world order and the fall of the United States as being the preeminent global power, at least diplomatically.
Did you see this new Sarmat missile system of Russia that is so big, gonna take out a country of the size of France out of the map? In case of any escalation in Ukraine, it's gonna be so dangerous for Europe.
Russia's going to be the last one to use nuclear weapons. That's not their first option at all. It depends entirely upon what the West does and the kind of threat the West poses. So far, Putin has avoided taking the bait to dramatically escalate the war and attack bases inside Poland and inside Germany and Romania. Clearly, he would be justified in doing so because they've been enabling these attacks on Russian soil. But he's stayed away from that so far. But if the United States does something crazy or tries to intervene more directly in the conflict, that could change the whole calculation. I mean, the war of attrition, it's sort of an unexpected benefit to Russia. I think they've been frankly surprised that I think they may have calculated the West had a deeper bench when it comes to producing military weaponry, and have been, I think, shocked and surprised to realize that the West cannot keep up with producing like something as simple as artillery rounds to sustain Ukraine's needs. They can't even, it takes them a month to produce what Ukraine is shooting in a week. So it's just, there's no way you can, you're in the negative already. So I think, Russia has so far been content they're not only degrading Ukraine, they are degrading NATO. And I think Russia has some other cards to play. If they could peel off Turkey from NATO would be in big trouble. Because right now, in terms of official members of NATO, Turkey has the second largest army after the United States. At the start of the special military operation, I noted that a de facto member, Ukraine was, essentially accepted as a member, although it didn't have the rights and privileges. But nonetheless, its military represented the second largest within NATO. And now Ukraine is decimated. I wonder if Turkey is going to have the stomach to stick it out.
Turkey finally going to join BRICS, or they're going to be in the middle just playing with both sides?
Well, there's been hints that Turkey's been talking to Iran and making queries about actually maybe joining BRICS. And, I think they'll find it much easier to get to unite with BRICS than to unite with the European Union. The Europeans don't like the Turks. They don't think the Turks are, pure enough, European enough to actually be considered part of Europe. And I think that, while that's been a long-standing hope for many in Turkey, I think that they may come to recognize that they're better off joining with BRICS, and or they'll at least be treated with some measure of respect.
Larry, how important is these depleted uranium shells in this war in Ukraine? Do you see any importance of using them?
I think it's just a negative from a perception standpoint. You know, there's conflicting information out there. Some says it does definitely cause radiation poisoning. Others say no. Whether or not that is true, what is true is that it is condemned by the United Nations. Most countries in the world condemn it. And it's just not a good look for Ukraine to be trying to use those. Because again, it goes back to the desperation mode. They don't have any other alternative. So that's why they're trying to, this is a last ditch measure. The Russians have been very careful, despite the propaganda, to avoid civilian casualties. If you go back and look at what the number of civilians that were killed in the U.S. invasion of Iraq in 2003, compared to the number of Iraqi soldiers that were killed, I think we killed far more civilians with just bombing and such. So Russia has done just the opposite. It's been very focused on killing and causing casualties among the military personnel, and made taking great strains to avoid harming civilians.
CNN polls reported that 70% of Americans think that things are going badly in the U.S.
Just take a look at the mood of the country right now. 30% of Americans in this poll say things are going well today, Sarah. 7 in 10 Americans say they're going badly.
I am going to make the assumption that the economic concerns are one of the really big issues for Americans. Inflation, not having their jobs, give them enough money to sort of keep up.
Do you think that would be a sign for us the next president of the U.S. going to be a Republican?
Well, it depends on if the voting is fair, if they continue to allow cheating to take place. The stuffing of the ballot boxes, the failure to properly check mailed-in ballots to ensure that the signatures match the signatures that were on file. If you don't do that, then it doesn't matter what people really think or how they really vote. You can steal the election. The problems that beset the United States are of its own making. Excessive spending. That's number one. The failure to devote adequate resources to rebuild infrastructure. That's a longstanding problem. You've got these Democrat mayors of the major cities that have just refused to crack down on crime, refused to enforce any kind of standards, and they've allowed the homeless to take over, the drug culture to soar, and crime to spread. So, you got people leaving San Francisco now in significant numbers just because they no longer like to walk along streets where people are literally defecating in public. And really, it takes a while to get it cleaned up. It's totally disgusting. You got streets in Philadelphia filled with, they look like zombies. Drug addicts are just bent over and they're passed out, standing on their feet. So it's, America just needs to take a good hard look in the mirror, fix her own problems at home before going out trying to solve the world's problems.
Larry, just to wrap up this session, some estimations show that the Ukrainian army have lost 400,000 soldiers. Do you think that these estimations are close to reality, or they're not?
I think it's probably more than that. And it gets more with each passing day. Oh, how do we know? Well, one, the postings on social media. Even the BBC came out the other day with an interesting video report where they showed the massive flags that are planted for every combat casualty or in these cemeteries. They're having to build a cemetery that's going to hold 600,000 bodies because they've run out of room. These cemeteries are filling up across the landscape of Ukraine. And part of the reason we know that is there's overhead imagery. You can see it through satellite images. And you got social media where grieving fathers, mothers, girlfriends, wives, brothers, sisters, they're posting, the photographs on social media so you can see it. You don't have anything at all like that in Russia. Nothing at all. Not even comparable. So that's one of the ways that the extent of the casualties are quite high.
Do we know anything about the public opinion in Ukraine?
The only public opinion poll I saw or heard referenced was that the vast majority of the population is turned against Zelensky, and I think that's because of the war. I don't see a great there's not a wild enthusiasm in Ukraine to continue this war and to continue losing people.